the mother of all talk shows. Welcome to the Open University of the Airwaves with George Galloway.
It's another bronze in Benin for little Napoleon Macron as French and Nigerian air forces are forced to bomb the capital city of the Republic of Benin. They bombed the army base. It's all going swimmingly for Macron in Africa, and war has broken out between the United States and Europe. The most corrupt country in Europe is Europe, the European Union. It's all coming up on here, the mother of all talk shows. Stay tuned.
Curious about our curriculum? Have something to say? Then call us now to join the debate on the mother of all talk shows. The only education you can get for free. George Galloway. The mother of all talk shows. With George Galloway. The world is our classroom, and you're welcome to sit in and join the seminar.
Yes, that's right, they're into Africa. The French, having been ritually humiliated in Niger, in Mali, and in Burkina Faso, have decided that a coup in Benin is a step too far. With its ultra-valuable coastline, its port, and its capital city, recently adjudged the most beautiful capital city in Africa. Well, it isn't so beautiful this evening because the French Air Force are bombing the army of Benin in their military base. They say that the coup that was mounted overnight and was revealed to the world this morning by a group of junior officers is over. It's finished, except we haven't been allowed to see their puppet president, if he's safe and still in control, and the leader of the junior officers is broadcasting constantly on YouTube. And if it's over, why are the French still bombing it? Even worse, Macron phoned his boyfriend, Tinubu, the former drug dealer in the United States, now the octogenarian stooge of France in Nigeria, and told him to start bombing his neighbor too. And he did it. More than that, he's mobilizing the Nigerian army to invade his neighbor Benin. That's the Nigerian army that cannot protect the Nigerian people from the Boko Haram terrorists. That's the Nigerian army which has lost control of much of its own country's territory to a group of ISIS-inspired fanatics, Christians, Muslims, being slaughtered every day by Boko Haram. But where is the Nigerian army? It's bombing and about to invade Benin. Now, I don't know anything about the junior officers that mounted the coup, but everything I've learned in the last 12 hours, 18 hours, tells me they've got a point. Any president that requires the bombardment of foreign air forces of his own capital has already lost. Even if he emerges, and he has not emerged since last night, no sight of him has been caught by anyone. No still picture, no moving picture, no words on a microphone, nothing. And the people of Benin are voting with their feet. They have poured onto the streets of the capital in their thousands, if not tens of thousands, to back the army revolt. We'll keep you posted, and a man who knows more about Benin than me, Jackson Hinkle, is my first guest this evening, so you'll be very well educated on Benin this evening. More importantly, got to say, no disrespect to Benin, the United States is now in a state of war with Europe. That's the only way you can interpret the events of this week. The new National Security Survey of the United States writes off the European Union, writes off the possibility of new enlargement in NATO, writes off any possibility of American forces ever entering Ukraine, and writes off the chances of any European country that tries to do so in its stead. And that was only Wednesday. Then on Friday, a war of words erupted after the European Union fined Elon Musk, one of the confidants of the American president, £150 million for refusing their bid to try and censor X users across the European Union. In the 48 hours since, X has become the number one
International
source
order
of
is very
news
clear.
in every single European Union country. Everyone has X as their number one source of news. So the European Union has picked a fight with the continent's number one provider of news. And it's not going well for the European Union. The Russian negotiator, Kirill Dmitriev, put up a poll. What is the problem with the European Union? Should we start again with the European Union, or should we back the bureaucrats? The bureaucrats mobilized 50,000 bots to distort the outcome of the poll, but they haven't noticed our poll. And wait till you see the results of that. Everybody knows that these unelected tyrants, elected by no one, accountable to no one, removable by no one, earning a king's ransom even when they're not pocketing the money of the European taxpayer in corrupt practices. You'll recall the Belgian serious crime squad raided the European Union headquarters in Brussels just this week and arrested and detained some of the biggest panjandrums in the entire European Union, including the previous Foreign Minister Mogherini. The alleged fraud comes to hundreds of millions of euros over decades. Hundreds of millions of euros fraudulently obtained, it is alleged, by panjandrums of the European Union. It is the sick man of Europe. The EU is the sick man of Europe. The most corrupt country in the EU is the European Union Commission itself. They have destroyed their own societies, their own cultures, their own economies. They have left themselves friendless throughout the global south, throughout Eurasia. And if the French got a chance to reinvade Britain after 1066, trust me, they would take it. They are trusted by nobody, except the credulous Chinese fans, only fans in the world, who think that Napoleon Macron is somebody worth taking a selfie with. And he's not even trustworthy in China. The Chinese went a bridge too far in welcoming Macron, but no sooner was he back in Paris, he was threatening China with tariffs if they did not correct the trade imbalance. The trade imbalance is because of this, Mr. Macron. Nobody in China wants to buy anything from you, but everybody in France wants to buy something from China. It's called capitalism. You, as a former banker, I won't mention the name of the bank, you as a former banker, I said, should know about capitalism and how it works. Well, Musk didn't take it lying down. £150 million for refusing you access to our back door, if you'll forgive the pun, so that you could spy on ex-users in the European Union. 150 million pound fine so that you could spy on people, so you could censor people, so you could identify people that needed to be spied on, that needed to be censored? No thanks, said Musk, who does quite a bit of censoring of his own. And that's usually to do with the bastard child of Israel. But he's not prepared to be censored himself. He's not prepared to be censored by the European Union. And so the EU's own advertising portal on X was promptly banned. And Musk embarked on what can only be called, if he'll forgive the phrase, a jihad against the European Union, calling for its abolition, as any sensible person would do. And he's not without friends, because within minutes, the Vice President of the United States, jdvance, waded into the row. He condemned unreservedly the EU's attempt to hamper the free trade, to hamper the business of American tech companies, and has demanded that the European Union reconsider. Well, will they reconsider? If they reconsider, they're only confirming who is the daddy. And it ain't Macron, it ain't von der Leyen, it ain't Callas. The daddy is in Washington. If they don't reconsider and abolish the fine, the American administration itself will go to war with them. If they're lucky, it will not be a hot war. But the United States has many levers that they can use against the European Union, composed as it is of some of the most failing societies, failing countries on planet Earth. Countries that are in a slough of despond. Germany, which just introduced conscription, the first member of the European Union so to do in this crisis of NATO versus Russia. The French people, the British people who are not in the EU but might as well be. We've done nothing good with the Brexit that we worked so hard to achieve, and we are now shadowing every single move of the European Commission, except when we are doing more, worse, and faster and harder. So the peoples of the European continent, including Britain, are in this slough of despair. They look at their societies and they don't recognize them as the countries that they grew up in. They don't recognize a Europe that only a few years ago, under Borrell, was claiming to be the garden and describing the rest of the world as the jungle. And now they see that the garden is ruled by the gargoyles within. Now they can see that the people in charge of European destiny are not fit to run an escargot stall. They can see the failing, fading, flailing leaders, most of them almost down to double digits to single digits. All of them are in double digits. All of them are less than 20, but most of them are hovering around 10% of public opinion approval in their countries. So, it's never been truer, what I've been saying to you for years, that the sun is rising in the east, and it sure is setting fast in the west. And of course, that's before we come to the Ukraine war. The Ukraine war is now motoring to a conclusion, brokered by a right-wing Republican president, Donald Trump, and the Russian Federation itself. Ukraine are not even at the table. The European Union have been banned from the table. At least Zelensky will get allowed to come to the table to sign the final agreement, but the Europeans will not. So they have spent hundreds of billions of euros and pounds in a Ukraine war that is about to end without anybody giving them the time of day without so much as a by your leave. How's that for a record of failure? The Russian armed forces are now advancing at such a pace you can't keep track of them. I used to send out, retweet military maps of the front as it changed. For a long time, not nearly enough of a change. It's now the case that the map is no longer relevant or valid or applicable the moment that it is drawn. Before the ink is dry on the latest military maps, Russia has advanced and substantially advanced still further. It's only the first week of December. The Russians in the Zaporizhia region have advanced by 85 square kilometers. And that's just in that one region. Right across a 1,000-mile front, the Ukrainian forces are deserting, are surrendering, are escaping, and so they should, and I hope that they will in increasing numbers. Who wants to be the last man to die for the chiseling little crook of Kiev? Zelensky, who's only measuring the aeroplane he's going to escape from and with, to see how much of his ill-gotten gains he can cram into the hold. They are revealed to be the criminals that we said they were right from the start. And the New York Times, that called us Putin apologists, reading Putin speaking notes, being mouthpieces for the Kremlin. The New York Times is saying exactly this day what I've been saying to you these years. The Economist, the Financial Times, the Telegraph even, and even Rupert Murdoch's Times are all telling you the war is lost, and it's been lost not just from without, but from within. The corruption of the Zelensky regime has destroyed any possibility of a state of Ukraine of any kind with any borders emerging from this bloody imbroglio that should never have started in the first place back in 2014. And the vultures are hovering. Did you know that there never was a Ukraine? Did you know that the USSR created Ukraine, made it a constituent republic of the Soviet Union, took other people's territory and gave it to that artificial state of Ukraine? Poland owned for centuries the western part of Ukraine. Lvov, if you've ever been there, is as obviously Polish a city, and the language being spoken there is Polish. The Carpathians were stolen from Hungary. Other parts were stolen from Romania. By the way, whatever happened to those Ukrainian rent boys that set fire to the Prime Minister's houses and cars? Why is nobody paying any attention to that case? Why has it been kicked into the summer of next year before it comes to trial? And why is nobody investigating just who these men were and what their relationship to the British Prime Minister was? If you know anything about this case, you only know it from me. And that tells you the liars that have been lying to you about Ukraine right from the beginning are continuing now, most of them, to be stumm, as the Churchill of the 21st century will be lucky to escape prison, be lucky to escape in an airplane. So I say again, who wants to be the last man to die for Volodymyr Zelensky? Not many takers for that one. I'll be right back. Stay tuned. marks to you for your dogged persistence and your quiet and dignified insistence that you were right and I was wrong. I don't actually recall the clash that we had, but I would have to say that you are being proven right, and I am being proven to have hoped for things that have not transpired. Because I said all along, I repeated it 100 times, that the big enchilada, World War III, an intensification of American involvement in the Ukraine war was more likely to happen under the Democrats, under President Kamala Harris, than under a renewed President Trump. And I'll go to the stake defending that position.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Breaking news, by the way, a sixth airstrike has been launched by Nigeria and France against the capital city of Benin. We'll be talking to Jackson Hinkle in just a couple of minutes about that. But first, the poll tonight is breaking records. Not just is it a big one, 30,000 people have already voted. Is the European Union corrupt? Is the Pope a Catholic? Do bears defecate in the woods? And do Rangers supporters run the VAR system in Scotland? Is the European Union corrupt? Yes or no? You can vote on my Telegram channel, t.me/George Galloway, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream. And if you're watching on the YouTube stream, fed up asking you this, please subscribe to my channel. Still, half of the people watching on the YouTube stream have not subscribed to my channel. If you are one of the creme de la creme, one of the vanguard, and you're following me on Patreon and supporting the show that way, it's patreon.com/George Galloway. You can vote through all these portals. If I tell you the numbers so far, with 30,000 having voted, yes, 99%, 96, 97, 99 and 100. How's that, Mr. Dimitriev? This is the free people of Europe voting in this poll. If you want to call the show, it's toll-free in the United States and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 08081 965522, and the worldwide number 0044-203-966-2625. Now, Jackson Hinkle, my political son, US-based political analyst, and the host of the wonderful show on which I'm shortly to appear myself, Legitimate Targets, joins us now. As this breaking news comes in, Jackson, a sixth bombing raid by foreign air forces on little Benin and its beautiful capital city. Doesn't sound to me like the coup is over. What do you think?
Well, thanks for having me back on. Yes, this was a really shocking day. We woke up this morning with the news that there was a coup underway in the country of Benin, the coastal country of Benin, which is extremely important to the rest of the Sahel Alliance states, the AES states, Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger, because it would give them unimpeded access to a major port in the Sahel area. So this was shocking to me. I didn't really know what to make of this coup that took place in the early morning hours, because sometimes these African coups take place, but it's actually the French that are backing these coups and they want to shift around the leaders. But it appears as though this was an entirely real sovereign effort led by the Lieutenant Colonel Tigri in Benin. And within a few short hours, we had the airwaves, the national TV broadcast airwaves, taken over by the coup leaders. There was about 13 men that led this effort, all of the military. And not too long after that, we received all of these French-based reports from AFP and other French outlets saying that the coup was over. And that was in the very early morning hours. Again, I want to stress that. That was a long time ago. They claimed the coup was over. Everyone had been arrested. Some people were even saying that these coup d'etat leaders had been killed in the clashes that were ongoing in the capital city. That turned out to be a bunch of lies because, as you just said, there were 6 airstrikes in the capital, at least 6 bombs that went off. Local sources are saying that it sounded quite clearly like airstrikes, and it would make sense because not only has there been a French surveillance aircraft above the capital city in Benin all day, but there were 3 Nigerian aircraft that entered into the country and were circling over the capital city during the time in which these loud explosions took place. I would presume that they were trying to locate and then target the coup leaders. Some were saying that these coup leaders were on the run. Again, some were saying they were arrested, and some of the other ones were on the run. What we do know is that the Lieutenant Colonel Tigri, who led the effort, was not arrested in the early morning hours. He made a statement late in the afternoon saying that he demanded the supporters of the coup to get out in the streets and protest against the French-backed president. And a lot of people did do that, so it's very, very disheartening to see that Nigeria is taking their dictates from a random white guy in Europe who has an approval rating of like 5% amongst his own population, and they're doing his bidding by now going and airstriking, presumably, innocent people that are just fighting for their sovereignty in another African nation. We also saw today that ECOWAS, which is an imperialist tool in Africa, and the African Union, another imperialist tool, both condemned this coup effort. But I fully stand by it, and I hope for the best. I hope that they make it out alive, and I hope that they are able to assert sovereignty in Benin once more.
And of course, the puppet president has not been seen, has he? Not a still, not a video, not a word on the radio. That doesn't sound like someone who's firmly in power, does it?
Of course not. It sounds like he's trapped like a rat somewhere in the capital city. Whether he's trapped by his own security forces or whether he's trapped by the coup leaders, I guess, has yet to be determined. But you would think that if this coup failed and everyone was arrested, you would have at least someone from his administration who would have come out on national television and said that simple fact, given a statement. But all that we saw was the interior minister from the Talon government, who's the former or current president, depending on how you look at the situation. He went out on private TV airwaves, not the national syndicate that was taken over in the morning by the coup leaders, and he gave a statement. And as for the president, you're correct. No one knows where he is. No one has seen him. There hasn't been any phone calls from him, any media appearances, any videos, nothing whatsoever. So I guess we're still waiting for the answers on that.
And what do you make of this tinubu? The Nigerian armed forces are being offered help from Donald Trump. So difficult are they finding it to protect their own people from ISIS and its chapter there, Boko Haram. So the Nigerian military can be spared to go and attack their neighbor, but they can't keep peace and stop ISIS in their own country. What kind of president is that?
Well, it's a good question. I mean, Tinubu has very long-standing ties in the United States. Max Blumenthal and David Hundeyin, who's the latter is a Nigerian journalist, very famous, did a brilliant piece on Tinubu in the Gray Zone. Everyone should read it, about Tinubu's ties to cocaine trafficking networks in Chicago in his earlier years. So this is the type of guy that we're dealing with, in bed with the CIA, in bed with all these drug narco trafficking units. But of course, the West backs up the real narco terrorists like Tinubu, who, as you point out, are ignoring, I would say, the assault on their sovereignty by Western-backed terrorists like Boko Haram. Also now, JNIM, another terrorist organization linked with al-Qaeda, has also entered into Nigeria. They have been causing a lot of chaos in Mali, Burkina Faso, and Niger the past few years. And what is the goal here? Well, the goal is to try and take as many of the resource-rich regions in these countries, in particular in Nigeria, and the U.S. will cry foul. They'll say that Christians are being genocided, even though Christians and Muslims are being killed in both very high rates. Actually, far more Muslims are being killed than Christians in Nigeria. And then Eric Prince or some other private military contractor will get to send in their mercenaries to Nigeria, and they will take up all of the resource-rich land, the mineral-rich land, the gold-rich land in Nigeria, and illegally steal all of the resources. As for the question of why can't he do anything about this threat in his own country in Nigeria, but he launches all these airstrikes or these planes in Benin the moment there's a coup, there's a simple answer for that. President Macron of France gave a call to Tinubu today under the guise that there was a new offensive led by the Boko Haram terrorists in Nigeria. He made an emergency call, and apparently it wasn't about Boko Haram, because if it was, I'd imagine those fighter jets would have been used to do targeted airstrikes, hopefully on the terrorists, but instead they were used to go into violate the sovereign airspace of Benin and presumably strike the coup leaders.
Now, as you mentioned, Narco Rubio and his administration are again steaming towards Venezuela. The Dwight D. Eisenhower aircraft carrier has withdrawn from port in the last few hours and begun steaming towards the Caribbean. The shills of Narco Rubio are trumpeting that it's on, that Operation Southern Spear against Venezuela is on. Is that your take, and what's likely to happen next?
Well, I'll just say it's incredible. Lara Logan, who is a Trump insider, very close with all the Trump administration bigwigs, is, as you just said, tweeting out that Operation Southern Spear is on. This is the U.S. Illegal war that they've been drumming up for months now, or 7-8 weeks now at least. And tomorrow in Caracas, I believe, because what is today? Is today the 7th or the 8th? So it's on the 9th and the 10th, we're going to see about 5,000 to 6,000 people from all across the world standing in unison with the Venezuelan people travel to Caracas and participate in 2 days of major events to try and voice their opposition for this illegal war, which is a total sham if it's being under the guise of combating narco-terrorism for many reasons. But of course, the biggest and most recent reason of all is Trump just pardoned Juan Hernandez, the former president of Honduras, who is sitting in a U.S. prison cell for the next 45 years as a result of his involvement and directing of a massive narco network out of Honduras while he was president. So I can't believe that they would begin this operation right now at a time when 5,000 to 6,000 people from all across the world are going to be there. I wish I was there with all of them right now. I wish I was in Caracas. I know we have some mutual friends that are there, and all I got to say is I'm praying for everyone's safety, the Venezuelans and those who are traveling there in defiance of the U.S. war hawks.
Well, that's two big enchiladas. Let's go to the biggest of the enchiladas, the current state of affairs in the NATO-Russia war. I've been listening all day to Donald Trump Jr., for example, who's a remarkably eloquent critic of the Ukraine. He said, and I quote, Ukraine is fantastically more corrupt country than Russia. I've been listening to Tucker Carlson saying he hopes to go back to Russia because the last time he was there, I can only describe it as magnificent. The statement even of General Kellogg, who's on his way out, all seem to indicate that the Americans are going full steam ahead to get a framework to bring the war to an end. Meanwhile, the yapping and deeply unpopular dogs of war in the European Union bark pointlessly away. That's the optimistic outlook, and I happen to share it. What do you think?
Well, I'll first say that the I guess early departure of General Keith Kellogg is something that I am very happy to see, and I think it's a strong indication that we're headed the right way with regard to settling this madness with Russia. Before Trump was elected and before General Keith Kellogg was promised a seat at the table in these Ukraine negotiations, I read his book on what an America First Trump policy would look like with regard to Ukraine. And it was as bad as I read it several months ago or a year ago now, back then, as we all see it today. You know, it's not really a plan for peace. This was a plan for escalation. And at the time, I contacted the few Trump officials that I knew, people who I presume would be in the administration, and made a strong case that he not be hired. So I think this is the 100% correct direction. I'm labeled as a Russian puppet. You're labeled as a Russian puppet. So what that really means is we tell the truth about what's going on. And if our enemies like Kellogg are on the way out, that's a good thing. As for the military front, you said it better than anyone else a few moments ago. Every single part of the front line is going in Russia's direction right now, and it's not by any small margins. The Russians in Zaporozhye are collecting about 100 square kilometers each and every week, and that's just a small part of the front. You look at what's happening in the Kramatorsk-Slavyan salient, it's forming into a semi-encirclement of the last major Ukrainian defensive and the largest Ukrainian defensive position that they have in Donetsk. And even in the north, in the Kharkov region, you see the Russians moving forward, which looks like they're going to collapse all the way over to Izium, moving even west of the Oskol River. So this is a very, very difficult situation for the Ukrainians, and I would not be surprised if Zelensky is going to be on his way out very soon. I don't know where he'll go, maybe Israel, maybe Miami if Trump is gracious enough. But I really can't imagine that he's going to last too much longer because the cards are all falling and none of them are in Zelensky's favor. I am worried about who they're going to try to replace him with. This Zelensky character that London is propping up is talking about nukes for Ukraine, NATO for Ukraine, all the same old stories. And I think we need to have real elections in what remains of Ukraine. It can't be London propping up another Warhawk, but for everyone who thinks that this is going to end with some negotiation, I think that you're missing the big picture here. This war is already coming to a close, and it's with a Russian victory.
And of course, the analysis that we have consistently made, which got us branded and labeled, is now the analysis of the New York Times this day. It's the analysis of The Economist, the Financial Times, even the Telegraph, even the London Times. So they've caught up with us. I suppose we should sing hallelujah, but it would be nice to get an apology, wouldn't it, Jackson?
Well, look, our only crime was that we were 4 years too early to the truth, and being 4 years too early to the truth does not get you $30 million investment deals like Pierce Morgan, I guess, is now vying for. So that's the price we pay. But I think you are as happy as I am that we pay that price and we don't sacrifice our spine in the process.
Absolutely. That's Piers Morgan has valued his show at 115 million pounds sterling. So that's what, 130, 140 million US dollars. And he's trying to raise 30 million to market his show more. I'm on the lookout for someone that would do that too, Jackson. If you ever come into money, son, I'd love to go into business with you. Thanks very much, as always, for your expert analysis. A man so young and yet so wise. Jackson Hinkle, US-based political analyst and host of Legitimate Targets. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls coming up next. Stay tuned. I think you don't have to worry about these things with Mamdani, because my overwhelming feeling is that Mamdani is a phony. He has as much intention of doing these things as, you know, I compare him to a figure in British Labour history who became briefly famous in the US when Joe Biden was found to have plagiarized him during a presidential run some decades ago. But that man's name was Neil Kinnock. He used to talk all this flowery, far left guff like Mamdani does, but he had no intention whatsoever of actually doing anything about it, of doing any of it. So there's no chance whatsoever that Mamdani is going to defund the New York Police Department.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
My editor, Ron Mackay, has just instructed me that I must not presume the guilt of those Ukrainian rent boys, who may not, after all, have set fire to the Prime Minister's house and his vehicle. It's just, Ron, that it's been so long waiting for the trial, one wonders if a trial there will be in any case. Let me take a call. Let me give you the numbers again first. It's toll-free in the US and Canada, +1 844 944 3344. It's free of charge in Britain and Ireland, 0808 196 5522, and the worldwide number 0044 203 966 2625. Let's go to England, in Solihull, where Mukhtar wants to talk about Ukraine. Welcome, Mukhtar. What would you like to say?
Hi, George. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam.
George, listen, first of all, I'd like to thank your team, yourself, everyone else that's doing all the hard work in the background. We love your show. I watch you all the time. To be honest with you, I've ever since that time I saw you in Viva Palestina in one of the sermons you conducted in the mosque. I was sat in the front and I listened to everything you said, and I couldn't believe I had someone that relates to the same thing in terms of the Palestinian issue and so forth. I couldn't even move. I was so fascinated by your work. Regarding the war in Ukraine, to be honest with you, it was doomed to fail anyway for the Ukrainians, unfortunately. It was unnecessary. And to be honest with you, Russia was going to win in the end anyway. They had no chance, to be honest with you. I've been to Russia myself, and people are fantastic. And to be honest with you, it's totally unnecessary. Europeans had no business in interfering with the Slavic people anyway, and it's just not going to end very nicely. So you are vindicated. You're right. You said the war's going to finish in December, and there you go. Seems like you've been vindicated finally.
Well, that's a very beautiful call, Mukhtar, and it will be music to the ears of many, many people. I didn't know, of course, what you were going to say. I'm glad that we have subsequently met, but the analysis that you make is absolutely correct. It is this anti-Slav mania which has existed in the so-called West, which is more and more a meaningless concept. The transatlantic rift has become a Grand Canyon. Half of the European Union governments are already turned or on the point of turning, and when their people get an opportunity in an election, if it isn't cancelled or rigged, they will complete the turning of European Union governments. And the last ditchers, like Germany and France and the Netherlands and Britain, their people hate them. Their own people hate their own governments with visceral passion. And so these people are not acting in your name or in my name. They are destroying our continent. They're destroying our country for somebody else. In fact, not even for the president of somebody else, but for the former president of somebody else. They're still fighting Joe Biden's war at your expense and my expense. Mukhtar, thanks for that beautiful call. Now, have you visited our website, MOATS.tv? Write that down. We relaunched it earlier this year, and you can read all about the history of this show, which is a 20-year history. Next month, we will have been going for 20 years. I mean, this iteration is 505 shows strong. But before that, we were on Talk Sport, we were on WBAI in New York, we were on Talk Radio, and of course, 505 editions ago, we went onto the screen and haven't looked back. Our average audience per week is now more than 8 million. 8 million per week. And 1 week, you may recall, it was 13.5 million in 1 week. And the Piers Morgan show, which has a huge staff and a big plush studio and a lot of overheads, is worth 115 million. Well, our show, which operates literally out of a suitcase wherever me and Gayatri are, well, I think somebody should step in and make an investment. Anyway, we thank everybody who continues to support us, either through the donations on moats.tv or on the night. And this week's Wall of Fame has these names: Mike Elbini, Preston Zimmerman, Movie Dad, Elaine Ryan, and Mohajer Romero. What a beautiful collection of people and names. Please do become a MOATS donor tonight. Give what you can to support the show. There's a legend on the line. In Oklahoma, you know it's May in Oklahoma. Please welcome May. What would you like to say this evening?
Hey, George. Much love to you, to Gayatri and your team, and to all of your listeners and callers around the world. I'm so thrilled for you. As I told you some weeks ago, you have struggled your whole life, but you are really coming into your own. My husband said, don't be silly. He's come into his own a long time ago. He's had his own show and all that. And I said, that's true. But he didn't have the worldwide support visiting other shows as he does now. So, George, you have arrived. And the fact that the government is out to get you and forced you into exile is really proof of it. That's the clinching fact, isn't it? The fact that I've got to do this show now from unknown places and constantly moving from place to place. Though, by the grace of God, I have 4 of my 6 children with me sitting behind this curtain, and I'll be taking them for chips as well as Gayatri after the show. But beautiful words. Thanks, May. What would you like to say? Well, I wanted to say, I know you're a very religious man, and I am very religious. We have different religions, but we have so much we agree on. And I'm very concerned because I think a lot of what's going on in the world is just a spiritual collapse. Donna in Panama was talking last week about drugs and different things, people making excuses. I believe drug addiction is a disease. People don't do it on purpose. They want to have some fun or they want to stop the pain, and they take drugs or alcohol or gambling or whatever, and then they find that their best new friend is now their slave owner. I think it's important to understand that these addictions are a spiritual disease. I think that's why we have so many politicians who are addicted to war and violence and people hurting each other and doing criminal things. And I think it's important for us to talk about and emphasize the fact that we need a spiritual renewal in this world. We need people to be willing to step back and say, no, not only will I not be the first to commit an act of violence or to hurt another person, but I will try not to retaliate and seek vengeance no matter what. Do we protect ourselves? Yes, we do. But so many people think protecting themselves is doing what Israel does. That's not protecting yourself. That is complete spiritual collapse around the world.
Yeah.
So my main point is
there's no doubt about that, May. It's spiritual collapse around the world. That's abundantly clear. Not only is it not protecting yourself, it is storing up greater hatred that will one day be visited upon you. And I'm all for spiritual renewal, but I don't know where that's going to come from. The religious leaders are either, like my own, a big disappointment, or they are proactively evil. I mean, the idea that Hegseth and Donald Trump are going to lead spiritual renewal is, of course, for the birds. It's a complete hogwash. Nothing could be less Christian. In fact, there was a demonstration the other day in England at which the theme was that England is a Christian country, and these spitting, snarling, micturating drunkards who were behind the banner have never set foot willingly in a church in their whole lives. They've never said a prayer, and they're shills for Zionism in Israel, which believes that Jesus is suppurating in a pit of his own excrement in hell, and that his mother, Holy Mary, was a prostitute, and that his father was a passing Roman centurion. None of these people are going to lead any kind of spiritual renewal. So on the political as well as spiritual fronts, we truly are up the creek without a paddle. Beautiful call, May. Thank you so much. Give my love to your husband, please. Now, look, if you want to leave comments, just scan the QR code on the screen now. And if you're watching on YouTube, you can leave comments, and I'll try and read them out. Nikia says, why the F is the French government being allowed to get away with this? Imagine if African nations dropped several bombs on Paris. Exactly. Jamila Asfu says, France isn't only terrorizing Africa, they've been doing it for a long time, and it still isn't enough for them, even now in the 21st century. Zaidal Hindawi says, why isn't Kemi Badenoch talking about her native Nigeria instead of just defending Israel? I think she's now resigned as a Nigerian. I think she now claims she isn't. Peace Creature says, bye-bye pensions, we gave them to Zelensky. Well voted, Britain. And Gregory Rodriguez says, can anyone define what a Putin apologist is? I'd love to see that definition. Now let's go back to England, where Oksana is in the north of England, in Cumbria, in the Lake District, but about Ukraine. I told you, this is the global university of the airwaves. Oksana, welcome.
Hello, George. I would like to make a few points before I'm doing actually reading here. First of all, I never had it anywhere, and I'm actually surprised why. But when people saying that, Putin should have 3 days, his special military operation will take 3 days, they don't take into account what Donbass actually is. I'm from Pokrovsk, from the very known city to everybody now. And I can tell you one thing, they've been mining coal since Peter the Great. So, and it's been heavy, it's got lots of heavy metals as well. So it's a very industrial place. So if you go on any town, any village, you will see mine next to mine and the factory next to factory. And each factory being built during Soviet Union time, which is supposed to be withhold nuclear attack. So you can call it conquer, you can call it occupy, you can call it liberate, doesn't matter. But to take that place, it's quite difficult because you have very high points to control and the deep on the ground to hide. So each one place, it's actually very, very hard to take. It's why it's nothing left, like with Ugledar, like with the Pokrovsk and everything else. But once Donbass fell, once it's all gone, rest of it's agricultural, it's just the fields. Occasional villages, occasional cities. But the main fight is in Donbass because it's how it's built, how it's done, and how you live it there. This is the first point I wanted to make. Second point, I want to tell that all over the Western media, and if you look anywhere, for some reason people decided that they're morally correct, for them to fight to the last Ukrainian. Like your friend Piers Morgan, when he spoke with the Professor Mishme, he said we are morally, it's morally correct because we don't want to fight to the last Ukrainian because we don't want Putin to get what he wants. I am Ukrainian one, and I want to let everybody know I don't want to be last one. And I don't want to be second to last. Thank you very much. And I don't want anyone from my family as well to be in that line. If somebody wanted to fight to the last Ukrainian, they can go there. But please leave my country alone. I want people to understand. Ukrainian, I'm Ukrainian, and I don't want to be last one. So this one. And the last one is, thank you very much for truth.
Wow. Oksana, I didn't expect that from Cumbria, but it was absolutely magnificent, and it will travel far and widely. Thank you very much for making that call. Let's go to Ireland, to Derry, where Thomas wants to talk about Ireland and Zelensky. Welcome, Thomas.
Yes, all right, George. How are you doing? Okay?
By the grace of God, great, thanks.
Yes, I always watch your show here, and I'm from 20 Cashel Hill Park here in Gaza and Derry. And I originally came from 6 Brandybull Avenue, that's where I was born, so I've seen a lot of the trouble, And what I was watching the other day, I think it was Tuesday, when I seen the Irish government rolling out the red carpet for whatever you call them, and
the evil leprechaun.
Yes, the little Hitler. I think you named him a couple of times, George.
Yeah.
So,
yes.
The way it is, the way I look at it is right. I mean, the Irish government really, their whole idea is to join NATO, right? Now, for me, as I ran on Bloody Sunday, like thousands of other people, right, at the march. And, when I look back now and think, here we have an Irish government rolling out the red carpet, supporting Ukraine, supporting NATO, because they want to be friends with their great friends across the water. And that's the whole idea, George, And, I've seen trouble on the streets of Derry, and I'm not a member of any organisation or anything like that, But I can't understand why we would have to fall out with the Russians, because, you're talking about thousands of miles away. So why should Ireland get involved?
Well, exactly.
Yes, why should they get involved and put the people of Ireland in great danger? And whatever came to World War, that we be marked.
Well, look,
no mistake about it.
You've summed it up beautifully. Not only did they roll out a red carpet, he left with 120 million quid or euros in his back pocket, and that's pocket change for him these days. I know that, but the Irish people could have done with that money, couldn't they? There's plenty of things needing done in Ireland that could have benefited from that money. It's most unfortunate. The Irish government does not speak, I believe, for the majority of Irish people on this matter. And of course, the irony is they're not doing it for the leader across the water. because the leader across the water hates Zelensky and is trying to get him out, trying to force him out. So if Ireland thought that they were paying homage to the United States of America by the welcome they gave Zelensky, the opposite is true. They look just like Macron, just like Starmer, just like Merz. And who wants to be just like them? Thanks, Thomas. Let me take a quick break. And then it is the one, the only, one of our biggest and most popular guests, Professor Seyed Marandi, who is a professor in Tehran, but for whom the world is his oyster. Professor Mohammed Marandi up next. Stay tuned. Fabulous. Two great calls in a row there. One from California, one from Orlando. I think that Japan is walking on extremely thin ice in the provocations that they are currently allowing the US to manipulate them into making. I've spent a lot of time in China. I was there just a couple of weeks ago. There is visceral feelings about Japan in China. Of all of the countries of the world, China will never, ever, ever, ever forgive what Japan did to the Chinese people. They murdered more than 20 million Chinese. The war, which for us started in 1939 and for you started considerably more than that, further on than that. Japan invaded China in 1931 and didn't leave until their defeat in 1945. They further invaded other parts of China in 1936 and they killed 20 million Chinese people.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Is the European Union corrupt? Well, let's make this a giant raspberry to the criminals in charge of European Union affairs. You can vote on my Telegram, on my X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, or on my Patreon page. 34,000 nearly have already voted. The result is overwhelming, so you won't influence the result, but the bigger the vote, the bigger the blow to the crooks that run EU affairs in Brussels. Now, Professor Seyed Marandi has been our guest so many times, but one never gets tired of hearing him. Have you noticed that? One never says, and I've never heard anyone say, oh, not him again. We hang on his every word. And here he is again. Professor, welcome back to the mother of all talk shows. There's so much I could talk to you about, but let me start, if I may, with the bankruptcy of Europe. I mean, it's almost a cliche now, but Europe, which dominated the world for hundreds of years, and which was the source of much misery, but the source also of some joy, some spirituality, some culture, some achievements, it's now looking like a dog-eared wreck, isn't it?
Yes, and it's their own doing, George. Thank you very much for having me, and thank you very much for all the kind words. They brought it upon themselves, especially over the last couple of decades. Things have been going downhill very fast. Their policies towards Russia in particular, but also towards Iran, towards China, all of these have brought them closer to economic crisis. But I think the most disturbing of all is the fact that the Europeans are even taking a more harsh approach than Trump. Trump, who's bombing boats in the Caribbean, Trump, who's carrying out a genocide in Gaza. Just hours ago, a 3-year-old girl was gunned down by Israeli regime soldiers in Gaza. And every day in the West Bank, in Gaza, in Lebanon, in Syria, they're murdering more and more people. Trump is leading that. But in the case of Ukraine, the Europeans are more hell-bent on death and destruction than Trump is.
It is bizarre because on the face of it, they're milquetoast social democrats, Christian democrats. None of them would describe themselves as a Donald Trump type Republican. So the sickness has gone deep into what I call centrist political leadership in Europe. And that's before we even touch on the spiritual collapse, the kind of degeneracy into which the West in general has sunk. It's not just the sun that's risen in the East, it's a moral star also, isn't it?
Yes, it's the collapse of the family, hostility towards God and religion, but also, George, it's really quite shocking for me to see how swiftly France, for example, during the months before the invasion of Iraq, in the UN Security Council, it stood up against the United States at a time when you were leading protests in the UK and you traveled to Washington and had that very famous exchange in the United States. France was steadfast and it earned our respect. But now France is bombing Africa while Trump is bombing the Caribbean. France is insisting on having more Ukrainians killed for a war which they know Ukraine is going to fail in. It's unbelievable how they're sacrificing their own people, the Europeans, the European governments, yet they know that hundreds of billions of dollars are being stolen from the funding that goes to the Ukrainian regime. And they knew this all along. The news that is coming out from the New York Times, this is something that the Americans and Europeans knew from the beginning, but they withheld this information in the past because the policy was to support the regime in Kiev. But once the United States decided that it wanted to take a different path, it starts opening the books. So the French know this. They know that this is not a just war. This is a war, a racist war where neo-Nazis took over Kiev and then tried to crush Russian speakers. And during that period of time, taxpayer money from across Europe and North America was being stolen by these very elites. The French knew it, the Germans knew it, the British knew it, the Americans knew it. They were all in on it, and probably many of these officials are taking some of that money in one form or another.
Now, you know, a stopped clock can be right twice a day. I saw just before I came on air a statement by this joker Barak, the ambassador of the United States to Syria and a frequent lecturer of Arab journalists in Lebanon. But one thing he said struck me as potentially significant. Well, two things he said. First, he said, regime change operations don't work. We tried it twice in Iran, which was news to me because I thought they tried it more than twice. But he was very clear that they don't work. And the second thing that he said that I thought was significant was something I have supported all my life, which is that the division between Syria and Lebanon is an entirely false one. It was a border drawn by the imperialists, in this case, the French. And he seemed to be saying that Syria and Lebanon should be one country. Is he gone mad, or have I gone mad? Have I just agreed with Barak? Where do you stand?
I'm sure you've seen the Epstein email to him where he asked him to send a picture of himself and a child to make him smile. These are the sort of friends that Trump has. I think that the only reason why he's saying this is that he wants to undermine the resistance. He does not care to strengthen Arab unity or Arab sovereignty. The United States, for well over a decade now, has been doing everything possible to destroy Syria. In fact, just a while back, just hours ago, the Prime Minister of Qatar, in his interview with Tucker Carlson, said that we host Hamas because the United States and the Israeli regime wanted us to do so. And when did this happen? It happened when the dirty war in Syria began. So the Americans wanted to create a divide between the people of Syria, between Syrians and Palestinians, because they were worried about the axis of resistance. Now, the only resistance that has gone to the aid of the Palestinian people in Gaza, that has fought to draw off Zionist troops from Gaza as they were slaughtering children, is Hezbollah. And the Americans desperately want to get rid of Hezbollah and the resistance. They've used sectarianism with some success for a long period of time. And now I think he has, and the Americans have come to the conclusion that the Israeli regime cannot disarm Hezbollah. The government in Beirut that was installed by the Americans, they cannot force Hezbollah to disarm. So the best way forward is to keep pressure on the resistance from Syria, from Beirut, and from occupied Palestine. In fact, the head of CENTCOM sent a letter to the leader of Syria, Jolani al-Shara, and congratulated him, thanked him for apparently blocking and confiscating weapons that were going to Hezbollah in order to defend Lebanon against the Israeli regime. So I think his intention is not to strengthen Syria. His intention is to turn people against one another in Lebanon and Syria in order to further strengthen the Israeli regime.
Now, switching gear, the Saudis have just launched this evening basically a renewed invasion of the Hadramat area of Yemen, an area I know well. There are many people from Hadramat in the Indonesia, where my wife comes from, as you know. I hear the word Hadramat always and often. And now, in response to a mercenary operation launched by the UAE, which had some military success, the Saudis have invaded to counter the success of the UAE. How much more do the poor people of Yemen have to suffer from their intolerable, insufferable neighbors?
It is horrific. And the same is happening in the Sudan, where the UAE has been funding the genocide there. And of course, the UAE has very close ties with the Israeli regime. The Saudis and the UAE have been allies in Yemen. And to get and also sadly, George, so was Turkey and Qatar. When the genocidal war began against the people of Yemen, all of these countries were on the same page. It was only later when the Emirates and the Saudis turned against Qatar that Al Jazeera changed its policy on Yemen. Otherwise, they were supporting the Saudis before then. In fact, I got banned on Al Jazeera after appearing on a couple of times on their show Inside Story and defending the people of Yemen. So when the blockade began, Qatar changed its tone, and so did Erdogan. And of course, Qatar came to Iran for assistance, and Iran helped, yet Qatar still, subsequently, when things got better, they stabbed Iran in the back again. But in any case, all these countries were supporting the genocide in Yemen. And today, of course, it is Yemen that is standing up and defending the people of Palestine and blocking the Red Sea during the war in Gaza in order to put pressure on the Israeli regime. Yet these very same countries that were working together turned against one another. And now the Saudis and the Emiratis cannot get along in the south with their mercenary troops. They don't care for Yemen. They don't care for the unity of the country. They have been ripping the country apart for many years now. They see Yemen as their backyard. Both of them. Increasingly the Emiratis, but the Saudis from much earlier. Their behavior is like the United States, that sees the whole of Latin America as their backyard. They see themselves as having this mini empire where they consider Yemen to be their backyard, Sudan to be their backyard, and other countries on the Horn of Africa.
Yeah. Finally, because I wouldn't like to have you here without bringing it up, you and I are both closely associated with Venezuela, visited there many times, have many friends there, on what might be, one never knows, the eve of an American attack, at least invasion at most, of Venezuela. How do you think that is going to work out?
It won't end. And if they do really try to invade Venezuela, the United States, it will not end well. We've both been there. It is mountainous, it has forests, it has jungles. Part of the Amazon forest is in Venezuela. This is an ideal terrain for war. This is not the plains of Iraq, where even there the Americans suffered defeat. And you have to keep in mind, George, and I know you know this, those who support the government in Venezuela are from the disenfranchised class, the lower classes, the working classes. And when it comes to war, usually they're the ones who are much tougher than everyone else. They're the ones who have more courage, who stand up to authority. In any country, it is often the working class and the disenfranchised that are more radical, not necessarily in a bad or a good way, but who are more radical and who more easily come to the streets. If the United States tries to overrun the country, take control of the country, and install this Nobel Peace Prize winner, then I think it's going to get very bloody, and ultimately the United States will be kicked out of Venezuela. It will be worse for the United States than Iraq.
I said finally, but permit me one more question. It struck me there as you spoke. The World Cup draw, the most interminable, cringe-making, excruciating, appalling sight since the 1936 Olympics in front of Adolf Hitler. Iran are in the World Cup, but Iran were not allowed, didn't get visas, to be at this ceremony. They dodged a bullet there, if you ask me. But are the Iranian team going to be allowed visas to actually participate in the World Cup? Are Iranian supporters going to be allowed? It's a real farce, isn't it?
Yes, it's unclear if the United States will allow the Iranian team to get its visas or to get their visas on time. The watching Trump get his award and take the award and put it around his neck was quite bizarre. But nowadays we're seeing these scenes literally every day, whether it's the European leaders going to Washington as school children or going to China to scold the Chinese and being ignored. Every day we're seeing scenes that 10 years ago, 15 years ago, we could have never imagined would happen. Political correctness is out the window. European jets bombing Africa. American jets bombing fishing boats in the Caribbean. I was told, or I heard and I read, that the U.S. Coast Guard, when they stop boats that they think have drugs, 30%, 25 to 30% of those boats are clean. Now that's the Coast Guard, and that's their job, and it's near the shores of the United States. If 25 to 30% of the boats are clean, then imagine what the percentage of the boats, if they are sincere in seeking drugs. Let us just imagine that the U.S. is sincere in trying to find these people who are carrying drugs. And we know that they can't take them to the United States with those boats. But even if they are sincere, if the Coast Guard, when they board ships, 30% of them are clean, then imagine the percentage of boats that they've been bombing that are absolutely clean, and how many people they've slaughtered who are completely innocent and are just trying to fish or work to feed their kids in their own countries, whether it's Venezuela or Colombia or anywhere else.
Well, Trump might be some people's daddy, but you are all of our professor. Thank you very much indeed, Professor Seyed Marandi, as always. Let me take a quick break, then it's your calls. All the way up to Gayatri's social media roundup. Stay tuned. I wonder if there's more to it, Anthony. She says not, but might she be preparing for a presidential run?
You very well may, but Americans don't like a quitter. So even if she was starting to speak some truth, we're not going to take that very well.
Fair point. Very, very fair point. But Donald Trump's political position looks to me now extremely isolated. He has destroyed a very considerable part of his most militant base. He hasn't just lost Marjorie Taylor Greene, he's lost Tucker Carlson, he's almost entirely lost Alex Jones, he has substantially lost the support of Steve Bannon, and many, many others are beginning to question his judgment, and some even to question his continuing fitness for office. So he's in a very weak position. But if he wanted to, he could take the bull by the horns on this Ukraine question. He could say, stop sabotaging me. Don't think by leaking things you're going to divert me. I'm serious. I'm ending this war, and I'm certainly going to end America's involvement in this war.
You are listening to the mother of all talk shows with George Galloway.
Is the European Union corrupt? Yes or no? Well, 35,000 people have voted. Make sure you have your vote in on Telegram, on X, on the YouTube community poll, on the YouTube stream, and if you're one of the advance guard, on my Patreon page, patreon.com/George Galloway. Let's go to Texas, where Michael wants to talk about protests in the United States. Go ahead, Michael.
Hello, George. Good to talk to you again. Today, I'm calling to spread the word about a glimmer of hope that happened a few days ago. There was a protest at a Home Depot store here in the U.S., but they didn't just march around outside carrying signs. They all went in, bought a cheap item, and immediately got online to return it, tying up every register in the store. Thus, they prevented the store from making any money for the entire day. See, these are the kinds of protests described in the books I told you about when I called last.
Yeah.
By the way, I mailed you the books. Last night I tracked the package again. It's still sitting at your local post office in London since last week. Someone needs to pick it up and get it to you.
Okay, thank you very much for that. I recall our conversation and the books that you mentioned, and as an anti-capitalist protest, that sounds like quite an effective one to me. What were the goals of the protesters? What were they protesting about?
Well, here is the really the only word I can come up with. It's not really fitting enough. The cute part of it. They were protesting these ICE, Trump's new Gestapo. They were protesting these ICE raids, and they're arresting American citizens. They're harassing
every
people.
Day.
Just
every
like
day, every day I see a video of a pure American being arrested by ICE.
Exactly what they did to you and your wife, your people.
Yeah.
So what these protesters did was they went into the Home Depot store, which, because they utilize immigrants, these Home Depot parking lots are targets for these ICE raids. So the protesters, and I'm talking about a lot of people. I saw in the video, it had to be at least dozens, maybe hundreds. They went into the store in protest of the ICE raids, and all of them bought a 17-cent ice scraper, and then immediately got online to return it, went back, bought another one, and returned it. Every one of these protesters all day long. They tied up business in the entire store.
Well, that's very, very clever, and more power to their elbow. And I'll chase those books. Thank you, Michael. In Texas, let's go to New York, where Tom wants to talk about Ukraine. Tom, welcome.
Thank you very much, George. Thank you for taking my call. I wanted to agree with you and Colonel McGregor's assessment regarding the American economy. The United States was gravely injured financially when by President Biden after the Russian invasion of Ukraine in 2022. Sanctions are one thing, but throwing Russia out of SWIFT has, quote, boomeranged, end quote, on America's economy. Foreign countries are now reluctant to buy American debt, treasuries. They think if America can kick Russia out of SWIFT and seize $600+ billion legally purchased by the Russians, America could do it to us, be it China, India, and so on. Former CIA consultant Jim Rickards wrote about, quote, Biden's boomerang, end quote, in 2023. Please note the Federal Reserve lost $192 billion since late 2022. That doesn't include substantial unrealized losses, paper losses, on its bond portfolio, which rose to over $1.06 trillion in 2024. Is it because the Federal Reserve had to buy U.S. Treasuries because other countries didn't want to? Finally, I wanted to note that the U.S. petrodollar accord with Saudi Arabia ended on June 9th, 2024. Instead of using dollars, countries can now use their own currencies to settle oil trades. So, for example, the Chinese can buy oil from the Saudis, settle it in local currencies, and as a result, the U.S. dollar used to be 74% of the world's reserve currency a few years ago. It is now down to 48% in cross-border liabilities, according to jpmorgan.com on July 1st, 2025. So I'm very concerned, like you and Colonel McGregor. You're absolutely correct about the boomerang effect. And this war has to end for humanitarian reasons, for the Ukrainians, for the Russians, and also for America's economy going forward. And you've articulated well about what's going on in Europe, especially in Britain. It's very sad.
Brilliant.
And hopefully long
Brilliant call, Michael. You see how clever our students are here at the Open University of the Airwaves. Michael in Texas, Tom in New York. Let me give you some comments that have been left. Nick and Tony in Los Angeles have sent us $100 US. Thank you very much indeed, Nick and Tony in Los Angeles. And they say, Merry Christmas, George, to you and all MOATS supporters around the world, to the believers and non-believers throughout the world fighting injustice. What a beautiful comment. What a handsome donation. Thank you, Nick and Tony in LA. Ramplenzi01 says 1,000 American pastors became vassals to Israel this week. They traveled there with all expenses paid to receive a course on Christian Zionism. What kind of pastors are these people? EF3371 says, so the FIFA Peace Prize winner is about to start a war with Venezuela. The corrupt elite is alive and well and living in FIFA. It was excruciating. I never saw, as I tweeted at the time, it's the 1936 Olympics with selfies. Angela Hive 11 says the petition for a general election, which closed on December 5, ended with a total of 1,059,230 signatures. It was a magnificent effort. It will now have to be debated in the House of Commons. Of course, we will not get a general election, at least not in the foreseeable future, but that's not a reason not to sign these things. That's not a reason not to make that protest, to boycott that good or service. It's not a reason for sitting on your backside doing nothing. These people who organized that petition are to be commended. I just wish we had a House of Commons worthy of the petitioners. And Minky Len says you'll find out that's why they are abandoning trial by jury, so they can slip the two rent boys through unnoticed. It's 3 alleged rent boys who have allegedly set fire to the Prime Minister's property. Let's go to California, who wouldn't, where Will wants to talk about Candace Owens, the world's biggest broadcaster. Go ahead, Will.
Good evening, George, and Merry Christmas. And I just wanted to say how we enjoyed your interview with Tucker Carlson. It was very informing.
Thank you.
But this turning point versus Candace drama is really getting some traction. It's clear they don't want Candace to be in attendance. I frankly don't blame them, as she'll likely expose the entire suspicious cover-up over Charlie Kirk's assassination. But it's really actually a brilliant maneuver as Turning Point viewership numbers are down, but they were hoping to boost them on the 15th, so they reject her offer, and now she grabs their audience and brings them all over to her own live stream on the same evening. It's absolutely genius. Her numbers explode, their viewership tanks. She's been begging for answers from Turning Point and others for 3 months, and crickets until this week. Then at midnight on the 3rd, in a tweet, she gets an invitation. Well, George, that's 3 months to respond, and they demand 24 hours to reply with no call, no text, no plan. She's ready today but can't travel due to safety concerns, obviously, if any of her threats are credible, and we have no reason to think they're not. They reject her offer so they can conspire by planning weeks in advance to orchestrate a live-streamed Candace-bashing session. What do you think about all this?
Well, I think you've explained it brilliantly. What I initially think about it is that it definitely will not work. I see that this so-called Turning Point its numbers are falling, its viewership is falling, the orders for their merchandise is falling. The pretenders to Charlie Kirk's throne that step forward are less and less convincing, while Candace Owens appears like a vision from God. She has everything. She has beauty, she has brains, she has courage, she's a woman, she's a mother, she's a black woman. This woman is sent by heaven, I tell you, and she is knocking hell out of the enemies that she has increasingly, and which I've always had. So I wish her Godspeed in everything that she does. If I was in touch with her, which I'm not, I would have advised her not to go to this setup in any case. But she offered to do it online because who, if you were Candace Owens, wants to go to a Charlie Kirk rally? What on earth could go wrong? But to demand that she does so at the drop of a hat in person, so that they could organize a lynching mob for her, was patently ridiculous. And I think she's handled it with grace and with great power. And I foresee a great, great future for Candace Owens. I don't know what her ambitions are, but she's what Catholics call papabile. She could be the Pope, you know. She is really, really something. And as I said, she's an even bigger broadcaster than Tucker. And Tucker was the world colossus just a few short months ago. So I'm very glad that she's fighting Charlie Kirk's corner, seeking the truth. I just wish that people even closer to him than she was were doing so with quite the same gusto. Beautiful call, Will. Podcast news. Look, I told you we made it into the top 80 in the United States for politics. That was a tremendous feather in our cap, you know. Can you imagine how many podcasts there are in the United States? And we were, last week, breaking into the top 80. Well, this week, we have broken into the top 40 for politics in New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Chile, and Australia. That's New Zealand, Saudi Arabia, South Africa, Chile, and Australia. And we're in the top 60 in the UK and Ireland for politics. There's a QR code on the screen now. Scan it and download the MOATS podcast. Why don't you? Our old friend Yasser in Quebec, in Canada, wants to talk about Imran Khan, and I'm always ready for that. Yasser, welcome.
Bonjour, Mr. Galloway. Thank you so much for taking my call. First, I wanted to tip my hat to you for continuing to bring up Imran Khan, continuing to highlight his plight, continuing to stand up, speak up, and show up. Very few can claim show up part of it. You've been at the forefront of the struggle for ending his persecution and prosecution. The point that I wanted to ask you, and please stop me, I don't want to take too much of the time, but how do you see the parallels between the coup 22, 9th April 2022, to depose Imran Khan and compared to coup 53 to depose Prime Minister Mohammad Mossadegh in Iran. How do you see the parallels? And I want to quickly highlight that, as you know very well and very few across the world know, that when it comes to countries like Pakistan, USA is the final decider. But usually the primary executor of the nasty, nefarious agenda is the UK, the United Kingdom, being the erstwhile colonial power. In this case, in the case of deposing Imran Khan on 9th April 2022, the British High Commissioner, Dr. Christian Turner, had already started personally reaching out to senators and MPPs from Imran Khan's party, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, PTI, including a friend of yours, Senator Shandana Gulzar, a UK-trained lawyer, and was personally making the case to leave Imran Khan and join either Bilawal Bhutto or Maryam Nawaz because the future belongs to them, even though they can hardly muster 10 seats if a fair election is held. And then on top of that, all the activities, it's the fingerprints of MI6 and British intelligence agencies are all over this coup 22 to depose Imran Khan. A lady who was working, a British Pakistani, I guess a clone of Shabana Mahmood, her name is Fawzia Yunus. She was working at the High Commission in Islamabad, and suddenly she gets a cushy prize posting as Consul General of the UK in Toronto, right after the coup. And the suspicion is that these people were rewarded for the role that they played at the behest of the United States. But I guess I just wanted you to demystify for a lot of your global viewers and audience that the UK is the primary actor when it comes to execution of the US's nasty and nefarious agenda, particularly MI6. And Imran Khan is a victim, even though the Prime Minister at the time, Boris Johnson, happened to know him, their association harked back decades. And Imran Khan's own family, especially his in-laws, had such a clout in the UK, but MI6 overruled the government of the day, in my opinion. I'd like you to please opine on it.
Yes, the hour is late, so I can't go into as much detail as I would like, perhaps on another occasion, but the fingerprints, bloody and sordid fingerprints of the British state and its intelligence apparatus are, of course, found in almost all seas of misery across the world and have been for many centuries. They certainly were in the murder of Patrice Lumumba. They certainly were in the overthrow of Dr. Mossadegh in Iran. And they definitely were, much more recently, in the overthrow of Imran Khan. I should preface this with the following. I'm not and have never been a supporter of the PTI. I'm not Imran Khan's party man. I'm a friend of Imran Khan. I respect him very much. I respected him long before he became a politician. I respected him as a cricketer and as a captain of the great Pakistan cricket teams. I love him as a brother. I did not either support or oppose. Frankly, I didn't take enough interest. I was busy with other things. How his premiership went. I just cannot support or remain silent about a military coup against a democratically elected government in one of the world's biggest democratic countries. I can't remain silent, and I never have. I've opposed all of the overthrows. I even opposed the overthrow of Nawaz Sharif by the military. I came in to the story of Pakistan by through the portal of the trumped-up execution of Zulfikar Ali Bhutto. Because of that, I became close, very close for decades, to his daughter, Benazir Bhutto, also executed by the Pakistan military. One after the other, the leaders of Pakistan are overthrown and then exiled or murdered by the Pakistan military. And I could not, will not, remain silent about that. Even if I didn't like Imran Khan, I wouldn't remain silent about that. And when you factor in the reason why the British and Americans overthrew, orchestrated the entire show overthrew Imran Khan, all becomes much more clear-cut. They overthrew Imran Khan because he would not join their war against Russia. He would not sanction Russia. He would not break with China. He would not allow the US to overfly Pakistan on bombing raids in Afghanistan. He asserted his unique, actually, mixture of Islam and Pakistani patriotism, a love of sovereignty, a love of independence. He would not allow Pakistan to be a plaything of the imperialist powers. And so they overthrew him. We could have lived with that. Who wants to be the Prime Minister of Pakistan? God only knows. Or why. But they haven't just overthrown him. They have put him in a death cell without a window, with disgraceful food, in convicted death penalty conditions. They have denied him family visits, even when the High Court has ordered them to allow family visits. They have still refused. They have murdered his party men and women. They have murdered his supporters in squares all over Pakistan, on roads all over Pakistan, because they were exercising their democratic right to protest about the overthrow of their leader. They have rigged elections. They have tortured, disappeared his supporters. And then for an entire month, we didn't even know if Imran was alive or dead. His children didn't know if their father was alive or dead. Who can accept this? Who can tolerate this? Who will not raise their voice against this? I will, as long as God gives me breath. Thanks, Yasser in Quebec. Let's go to London. Manny in Acton in London. Go ahead, Manny.
Good evening, Mr. Galloway. It's a pleasure to speak to you again. Just wanted to ask you about your views on reform and the Green Party and the possible outcomes and the consequences if they manage to take over Labour or the Tories. And also, why does Iran hold back in terms of Israel? Is it because they fear World War III? I understand, as far as I know, that the Silk Road has been rebuilt between Iran and China. And how far do you think China will go to protect Iran? Thank you.
Well, I don't think Iran needs foreign protection. It needs electronic warfare material. It needs anti-aircraft missiles. It needs various pieces of kit, and I think they have all been delivered. But Iran is a major military power with a military-industrial complex all of its own. It's sometimes clear to me, my wife was just saying this the other day, that people underestimate how ancient and how great Persian civilization historically has been. I mean, Iran is not Afghanistan. Iran is a highly educated, highly developed industrial economy with fantastic scientists, great medical systems, and many other things. Iran doesn't need anybody's protection. But China and Russia are now strategic allies of Iran. So if you fight one, you are, to one extent or another, fighting all of them. And that's why that alliance is unbeatable. But the issue of reform allows me to say this. I understand, nobody understands better than me, how unedifying, how appalling the choice of Labour or Conservative is. I understand anybody looking for anybody else that they can vote for. But I've got to tell you, much as my main priority in politics now is to make sure that people don't vote Labour. That's the number one political dictum to which I dedicate what's left of my time in politics. Don't vote Labour. Labour must be destroyed. Whoever you vote for, don't vote Labour. But I'm not going to pretend to anybody that reform are better for the British people than Labour is. They are exactly as bad. Nigel Farage has the patina of a rebel, of an outsider. But Nigel Farage reeks of the inside. He reeks of the stock market. He reeks of the square mile. He reeks of the gentlemen's clubs. He reeks of, nowadays, the Israel lobby. He reeks of the NATO lobby. This man, who only a few years ago was appearing on RT, Russian television, and being lambasted for it, is now the number one hawk in the pro-Ukraine lobby. And that's quite a hotly contested position. So whoever you vote for, don't vote Labour. But don't imagine for 1 minute that Nigel Farage is an outsider, that he's anything other than a Margaret Thatcher tribute act, a rebirth of Thatcherite conservatism with the added poison of being a Zionist and Ukrainian fanatic. It's the legend, Erobos in New York. He's back. Erobos, welcome.
Greetings and salutations, Mr. G. I hope your family, Clan Galloway, the wonderful staff at MOATS, the audience and the brilliant colors, and the brilliant callers that are in brilliant colors are in fine fettle. I wanted to say that I hope that the Lady Gayatri Galloway, Mrs. Gayatri Galloway, teaches you the techniques of pencak silat from Indonesia. You know, it will go a long way to, I believe, not just stabilizing the arrhythmia, but getting you stronger overall, providing she even knows pencak silat. You can ask her more about it.
She already knows, yeah. She's indicating to me now that she knows, yeah.
Huh? Oh, fantastic, fantastic. I think it would, because you still have a lot of vigorous energy. You know, I was just looking at the president of Cameroon at 92 years old. This guy's old enough to be your dad or your grandpa, right? And he's president again, right? And he's smiling and his black don't crack. You know, he is shiny-faced. He's ready to do another 50 years in office. So, you know, you can easily be the prime minister, no problem. I mean, even in your sleep, you can do that. You have many moons left to go. I wanted to mention about the callers there. I think it was May, she mentioned something about drugs. I could tell you from my own experience of decades, you know, when I got high, you know, marijuana and alcohol, things like that, it was to cope with the pain, right? There's this song by Mobb Deep called Drink Away the Pain, and as they were making that record in 1995, it's a rap song, I was living that, you know, because I had a lot of unresolved trauma and issues that I didn't know about, because in our culture in the Caribbean, especially from the 70s and 60s, you know, the word trauma and child abuse, that did not exist in our language. It was just called growing up. You know, if you pull yourself up by the bootstraps, even if you had no boots, right? You just had to do it. You know, boys don't cry and all that kind of stuff. So I know when I partaked, I did it to sort of numb the pain of my existence because I didn't know how to deal with it. and in my interactions with many people in programs and incarceration and all of that, it's a lot easier to cope than to try to deal with trauma, whether it was caused by ourselves or what we have done to others, or mostly in a combination of both. Unresolved issues remain open. So I just wanted to share that right quick. Before I get on to the Uni Party, I see the great friend of the British people, Angela. She ain't bluffing with her ginger muffin. Rayner is back on the scene, and I was digging into her a little bit, pun intended. And it seems that she either is coming back with an axe to grind, or a bunch of grinded axes already, or Starmageddon offered her something that she wants, right, to get her back on side, as you all would say there. And what does she want, right? Power, privilege, a hooked up flat, right? New apartments. So he's either giving her something, or Rayner is coming back with a vengeance. And I'm here for it because it will accelerate the destruction of the Labour, so-called Labour Party. And finally, just a quick commentary about the Uniparty, which harkens back to my original call of many moons ago. I mentioned that what we have here, starting with Bill Clinton, is the ratchet system. And it's the same thing all over the Western world now, where you have the Republicans, they get in, they turn everything to the right, and then the Democrats come behind them and make sure it stays there. Because if you notice, even with powerful mandates, and Trump had a powerful mandate even when he first got elected back in 2016, 2017, he had control of all the three-letter spook agencies which are under the president. He had control of Congress. They were both Republicans. Even the Supreme Court was majority Republican. And why did he purposefully piss away that mandate? Because they, aside from the Epstein file, which I think is the main hook to his gallbladder, I think the general program is to keep the working class, keep them oppressed, right? Keep them divided and make sure they never rise, and I know you can articulate it a lot better, but I also watch the Workers' Party broadcast with Mark Belcher, I think his name is, and the wonderful Chris Williamson. Yeah. And I learned a lot from that, right? And even though you all weren't rubbing the faces of the Your Party, which is an identitarian failure, I like the way that it was handled, and maybe a lot of those people can be brought into the Workers' Party. Because without a Workers' Party, the working people have no chance. It's just Mad Max madness, and then dog eat dog. And more power to you, Clan Galloway, and thank you very much.
Well, it's me that should thank you for that magnificent monologue, really. And as I said to you many times, we want to arrange a regular monologue from you, not as long as I do, 20 minutes, but I don't know how long you took there. Maybe it was 5 minutes, and you covered so much. Angela Rayner, to answer just one of the brilliant points that you made, is coming back with a vengeance, and he is offering to bring her back into the cabinet as an alternative to her launching a leadership campaign. She recognizes that Starmer is now at rock bottom, and she thinks that she might have a chance of mounting a challenge and winning it, and actually taking the top job. She has rejected his cabinet offer. She's rejected a joint ticket offer from the supporters of the Weasel Streeting, whereby she'd be the deputy leader. She thinks she might as well go shit or bust. And that's what I expect to see. Andy Burnham, the mayor of Greater Manchester, would have a very strong chance of winning the Labour leadership, but he's not a member of Parliament. And he can't safely become a member of Parliament by someone standing down, creating a by-election, and allowing him to go through for two reasons. First of all, the Labour Party is so unpopular now. it's very difficult to think of a single constituency in the entire country that they could be confident of winning. And secondly, because if Andy Burnham runs to be a member of Parliament, I'll be running against him, and he'll have to face me also. Well, Erebos, let's talk soon. But Gayatri, who's an even bigger legend than you, is in the room, and she's got some social media roundup news. What's rattling, Gayatri?
Can I just say that the martial arts reference Erebos made is called Pencak Silat, which is the Indonesian form, and I was that. I did Indonesian traditional dancing, and I did Indonesian martial arts. I did all that. So yes, thank you for that.
But am I capable of doing it? That's the question.
Yeah, we'll work on it. We'll work on it.
Okay.
So the question is the European Union corrupt? Well,
look at the vote.
It's yes. Everything is over 90%, and some of them even 100%. Theresa Kelly says, well, since we all know that the EU and the US are corrupt on every level, the question really is, why are millions of its citizens so content? So to only complain about the problems instead of taking daily actions to remove the spiritually corrupt from power. Albert Einstein said it best: the world will not be destroyed by those who do evil, but by those who watch them without doing anything. And Zhang Zhemtao comments, I have an unquenchable curiosity. Who made the legislation that allows an unelected person to remain in office and not even be removed by parliamentarians? He is, of course, talking about...
Well, it's the EU. In 1975, when I was 21 years old, I was the tea boy for Tony Benn, for Michael Foot, for Peter Shore, as we roamed the country at packed public meetings, arguing against joining what was then the common market. Bad enough then. That's why when I was a member of Parliament, I opposed the passing of the Maastricht Treaty and the Lisbon Treaty, both of which created not a common market, but a European state.
Yeah.
But a European state with no democratic control.
No.
And that's the reason why I argued for Brexit. And successfully so. Not that we've done any good with it, but as Tony Benn used to say, if you cannot remove the people who control your life, then you don't live in a democracy. And the European Union, quite clearly, is not a democracy.
No, it's not. It started, of course, as an economic unit, a political unit, with supranational levels, overriding the sovereignty of these nations. But it's becoming more and more military, isn't it?
Military and political,
And then there is the soft power. And, of course, their billboard of soft power is the Eurovision Song Festival. And they've had a bit of a hiccup this week when not one, not two, not three, but 4 countries in the European Union, they pulled out. And these are Spain, Ireland, Slovenia, Belgium, the Netherlands. Very, very surprising, impressive, very good. So these countries have all pulled out of next year's Eurovision Song Festival.
And some still contemplating.
Absolutely, yes. So this is only the first 4 to kick off the process, because Russia was dismissed from the Eurovision Song Festival within days when it started the SMO, Special Military Operations, because it would bring the institution into disrepute. But Israel, so this...
Which isn't even in Europe or Eurovision.
No, exactly.
So all these European countries are leaving, and they're allowing them to leave, so that a non-European country can participate in the Eurovision Song Contest.
Yeah.
Make that make sense.
Exactly. So this dichotomy of Russia bad, Israel good, it continues, right? I mean, last month in the European Union, in the heart of European Union, this Italian journalist, Gabriele Nunziati, he asked a question to the EU spokesperson. You've been repeatedly saying that Russia should pay for the reconstruction of Ukraine. Do you believe that Israel should do the same in Gaza? And what happened? No answer. Instead, he gets fired. Yeah, everyone
He
has
got
heard.
fired.
He got fired. Yes, he actually got fired. He was the Italian, rep in Brussels, basically. Now, moving on to a fellow Italian, Francesca Albanese, our hero. She was our Nobel Peace Prize winner, really, wasn't she? She is the UN Special Rapporteur, and she has this week come out that they've really been going for her. I mean, she's been chased. They've tried to remove her, but she was elected again. They've tried to they've threatened her. The Trump administration have put sanction on her, not allowing her to get to the U.S. and therefore not get to the UN headquarters in New York. And it's gone on. I mean, simple things like when she is booked into a hotel on behalf of the European Union, they just cancel it.
On behalf of the UN.
Exactly. And medical bills not being reimbursed. She's being sanctioned economically. They're making a non-person of her economically, so she can't have cards, no bank cards.
They've even closed her bank account.
Yes, exactly. It's outrageous.
Incredible.
It's out.
Instead of getting the Nobel Peace Prize, which she should have got, now she has no bank account.
No, and no movement, no economic movement, no financial movement. I mean, this is really what you mean, what they call it freezing in, right? They're cornering her in. But she has bravely expressed that this won't stop her. She will just continue to say the truth as it is on Palestine.
Well, we're very lucky to have her. Anything else, Gayatri? I know it's 6 minutes past the hour and our kids need chips. Anything else?
Well, we will close with Palestine, but not before thanking the big donors of tonight, whom are Douglas McFarland, Sally Hossack, Kenneth Morris, Martin Higgins, and Lynn White. Thank you to all. You too can have your name displayed on the screen. Go to MOATS.tv, donate, scan the QR code. Thank you. Thank you for that.
Now, we told you last week that Tom Cody had sent us Marwan Barghouti song, a free Marwan Barghouti song. Since then, several others have. The more the merrier, the more songs, the better. The best one will eventually become the official song, I'm sure. But there are disturbing reports that the isolation and even physical assault on Marwan have continued. When all these celebrities launched an appeal for his release, disturbing account was given by one of his sons the next day that in retaliation for all these stars calling for Marwan's release, he was severely beaten by the Israeli guards in his dungeon. We can't confirm if that actually happened. We pray that it did not, but in any case, the demand to free Marwan Barghouti should be everywhere, in song, in print, and definitely in your heart. This is Tom Cody, Free Marwan. Good night from Gayatri and me.
"23 years in the shadows, chains on his neck. Elected voice of the people, but they play the blame game. From Koba to the world, his spirit won't break. 2 states, peace calling for freedom's sake. Free Marwan, let him lead the way. Free Marwan, and the lock away. From Gaza to the West Bank, Marta, just truth, no lies, beaten in the dark, but his fire still burns like Mandela's march. The tide it turns, campaign rising global from Derry to the Thames. Artists, MPs shouting, join the demand. Free Marwan, let him lead the way. Free Marwan, and the lock away from Robben Island echoes to Ramallah's call. Free Marwan Barghouti, tear down the wall. He's no murderer in the eyes of the free. He's hope for tomorrow, the key to peace. No more solitary, no more endless night. Release him now, make the future right. Free Marwan.